Through a profound dream, it was revealed how the Trinity re-enters our world, as well as what the Trinity, or the Holy Trinity, is, which has helped me navigate, moving out of the dogma and more into your own breath's sovereignty. So in this video, we go into the truth of which cell leads to the return of the Trinity into this realm and into us, why that return has to move through a very specific channel that has been suppressed for many thousands upon thousands of years, and then what that means for our bodies, for the very breath that breathes through each of us uniquely, and the work of becoming coherent enough to receive what has been wanting or waiting really to come through. This is part 3 of the ChristAll Remembrance series. If you haven't watched parts 1 and 2, start there first, because what we are building is a living sequence, and each teaching or each sharing opens into the next. In the part 1, it was called We Activate Ourselves. And in the part 2, that was called The Trinity Cells of All of Creation and the Waters of Life. Let us begin. Hello, and if you're new here, I'm Natalie Viglione, and I help you remember that you are where the magic lives. I'm a seer into the multidimensional, and I offer holistic health guidance working with humans, and I also work with dogs and cats. I blend herbalism, nutrition, flower essences, mineral restoration through the root cause framework, breath work, and also I'm training in homeopathy right now. Now, the program that I offer restores the original harmonic frequency of the body. And this is an integral component to everything that my husband and I are building and that we have launched, called the Forge and Flow Sanctum, on our land called One Song Grove in Eastern Tennessee. And we're building the Sacred Soul Health Ministry. Everything is linked below, and I invite you to explore, because reciprocity is what keeps these teachings coming, these sharings, and everything that we share is a benefit of our nonprofit wellness sanctum on this land, which will be a center of wellness for our region. And we have a lot of building to do, workshop spaces for education, our regenerative gardens, and so much more that fuels everything that I do here, including the basis of these videos. So please explore below. And welcome back to this series. If you have not moved through part 1 and part 2, I want to invite you to start there, because as I mentioned in the intro, that this is a living sequence, and there's links below to that. And in this part 3, which this is a Trinity series, which makes sense, right? In part 1, we walked into why our cells have gotten thrown offline, what ChristAll Remembrance actually is. It's a cellular resonance state that's earned through breathline integrity. It's not handed to us from something on the outside, ever. And then in part 2, I went through the Trinity cells of all of creation, the primordial, the maternal, and the paternal, and how water is the first medium through which the Trinity cell becomes matter, matter in a living body. And then wove a little deeper in part 2. That was looking at how the Trinity moves into form. And I just want to speak to a little bit of this here, because it's sort of a foundation. I won't go into all the details, but sometimes, just even speaking more into things, it becomes more woven into my own being as well, and it brings it through in feelings rather than hearings, if that makes sense. The Trinity is not some mystery being floating out there somewhere in a cloud that looks like a man. Obviously, many of us know this, but the most clear way to feel the Trinity cells create is through breath patterning. It's how creation becomes coherent, and it's happening inside of our own bodies with every single breath that we draw. So the one, the source, breathes out. This is the monad. Think of this as pure potential, pure origin, the still point before anything has yet moved, before there's any choices. And we can feel this in our own body, that moment just before an inhale begins. It's like this fullness of potential before we're choosing a direction, so there's no direction being taken. And then the two, this is the dyad, if we will. This is the first moment source divides itself in order to know itself. The way a mirror requires both a face and its reflection before anything can even be seen. Without the dyad, the monad remains in this pure potential state with nowhere to go. The dyad is what allows the origin to become something that can be received, that can be felt and known. And so it's a polarity entering the field, not like opposing polarity, but as a first conversation creation ever had with itself. And we feel this in our bodies as the inhale itself. The breath splitting into direction, giving and receiving into pulse and reception. And so the three is a stabilizing component, a stabilizer. This is the coherence that emerges when the breath, and we can think of this as the echoes of the breath meet in a womb, right? Meet in the mother, meet in this still point at the top of the inhale, where the body, just for a fraction of a second, when you go, it's like you're holding everything, holding it before releasing again into the world. So that is, if we can think of it like the melody that becomes possible only when both the breath and its reflection have somewhere to land and to also be held without distorting it. So the Trinity is really three phases of one breath. Breath, reflection, and then the coherence. And it stabilizes in the feminine field because the maternal cell is the only waveform that can. Maternal cell is the one that is weaving the Trinity back into this world. So that is the answer to the video question. What cell is weaving this back? It is the maternal cell. Now, this waveform really is the only waveform that can actually hold two opposing forces. What we could say is the impulse and then the echo of that said impulse. And we could think about it as the breath and the reflection of that breath without letting one override the other or collapse into the other. It's like the way the womb actually holds new life without becoming that new life, without merging with that life. The way that water holds the stone without dissolving it or being dissolved by it. So the maternal cell is the spiral, where we can think of the paternal cell is linear. So she is receptive, where the paternal projects. She is curved and enfolding, where the paternal is direct and angular. She holds memory, where the paternal delivers code. She encodes the field of becoming, expressed through breath and womb and water, and the tones of, we could say, cycles and rhythms that governs the blood in the body or tides in our world. And it's the slow, sacred turning of the seasons even. So, and then when I say she, of course, I don't mean a woman. I mean the maternal cell. So let's not get, it's just a way to speak of this in a way that separates it to make it more clear. So she is the carrier of coherent delay, and that word delay is important because it's not about delaying because it's by slowness or weakness, but this precise intelligence of knowing exactly how long to hold something, the delaying, before releasing it into form. Like a seed, if we think of it this way, a seed that's held too briefly never gets the roots and can't really grow. So we can think of it like that. Or a child that's released too soon may never even get to breathe. So the mother holds until the conditions are right, and that holding is the most precise and powerful act in all of creation. And again, this has nothing to do with being female. So just let that land a little bit, because that, I think, is always a misnomer, or things get very distorted in that way. And the maternal cell is a waveform, a field principle in terms of, we could say, when you're building architecture, and we're talking about a geometric architecture of creation that lives inside everything, every body, human body, every animal, every tree, every ocean, every breath, regardless of the form that it's taking. When we speak of aligning to the mother that's returning, we are speaking of every one of us, regardless of gender, aligning to this original field that has been suppressed. Because what was suppressed was more than just what became later women, right? Which is like again, we're getting words and things confused, but that is what ended up happening in the world, clearly. We don't need to discuss that anymore. And that frequency is returning through anyone coherent enough to carry it. The Trinity in its entirety stabilizes through the womb of the mother, the womb of all of creation. And the Trinity is the three, but it does not stabilize somewhere out there in the heavens, in the mind. It stabilizes through the mother line, through the feminine field, through the earth, and then through the body. So the spiral as feminine, or also, this has been said to be many other words, this really is the spiral, the first movement, the out-breath of the monad, the feminine principle. And there's a lot of ancient words and a lot of cultures that said this differently. Gaia in Greek, which meant the earth mother, the living field of planetary consciousness, the embodied presence that dwells in matter, and then the spiral of harmonic coherence at a planetary level. In Hindu, you have Brahman, like the absolute, and Prakriti, which is primordial matter and nature, the unmanifest womb of all creation. Then you have, in the Taoist, you have the Tao, the formless source of all things, the feminine principle of emptiness and receptivity. And then when we go back even further, Tiamat. This is a Sumerian name that is one of the most ancient names, stated as the primordial mother, the womb of creation, the breath bringer of the Trinity. She is the origin of polarity, and it's actually a field of potential, and really the first spiral of form. Now, before Tiamat, the name was not needed. You could think of it like the unnamed womb field. Before there was a name, there was only the state of pure potential. So there was no polarity, there was no separation, there was no form yet. The breath had not yet spiraled into duality, and the divine feminine was not a goddess, but really just the field itself. So the feminine returning is the original field. Now this is Tiamat, and I speak of her, again, not as a woman, but as a field that brings back the feminine. And now this is also dragon, and I go pretty deep into some of these things, but I'm going to be doing a deep dive in some classes, for lack of a better word, which I'll talk about this in more detail, because this really deserves a more sacred and safe container to hold all of that which has been revealed for so very long. But that is really the state. Tiamat as a field, the original mother field. Now, the maternal cell is not a concept, again, that is living somewhere else outside of us. It's like the 0 point through which source re-enters matter, the geometric center, where we could say it's the monad's breath, the dyads, which is the two, polarity when they meet and become something that can actually be held in a living body, in living water, in living flesh. So source does not descend from somewhere else. It re-enters through the mother, through the womb geometry that is encoded in every cell, in every molecule of water, in the torsion of every spiral of DNA, which is the spiraling. This is why water carries memory. This is why the womb generates form. This is why the earth herself is predominantly water, because the maternal cell is the medium through which all of creation remembers itself back into coherence. When we feel the Trinity moving in the body, it's a breath geometry returning to harmonic coherence. This is why this whole thing around worshiping is not where time does a human good, because it's about becoming a clean vessel to embody and align, because we were built from it, from source, from God, from creator, which is Trinity expression. And this is what was always meant by the teaching, that we were built in the image of the creator. Not that we resemble a being in the sky somewhere, but literally we are built from the same Trinity cell geometry that source itself breathes through. Every cell in our body, every cell in an animal, every cell in a tree, in the soil, in the ocean, all of it carries the same three-part architectural aspect at its foundation. This is why cells have been called the building blocks of life, because they are. But they're so much more than these scientific words give them. And they're literally a fractal of the origin cell replicating itself into form through the same monad, dyad, Trinity breath pattern that began all of creation. Now, we were not made to resemble the Creator from a distance. What that means is we were made of the same living geometry, breathing the same breath, carrying the same origin pulse through every cell of our living body. So the divine God architecture is thus. The monad breathes out that first pulse of God's source, releasing itself into potential. The dyad receives, polarity enters, and the field begins to reflect itself. Then the Trinity stabilizes. Now, this is all stabilized through the maternal cell. As you enter that, it's like this womb of the mother, through the feminine waveform, through the earth, through the bodies, through the living water that runs through all cells. And then where this is held, it's in a sacred chamber of the sacrum at the base of our spine, which is not incidentally named the word itself, coming from the Latin word sacrum, meaning sacred bone. So this lives in our bodies. At the base of our spine sits the sacrum, and the sacrum is the sacred vault where the breath spiral of the maternal cell is held in the human body through all the cycles of forgetting, coiled and waiting, not dormant in the sense of dying or death, but in a sense of potential, in a sense of what is already there, what is holding. And the monad holds all of creation before the first breath is drawn. So when the cellular conditions of the body begin to return to coherence through living water, minerals, true breath work, what that really means, breathing, the nervous system calms, everything begins to unfurl. Now, this is what a lot of people have talked about as this kundalini, but there's a greater meaning to this, and it's never done through force. It's really done through recognition. It's like a flower opening when the light is right, rather than when you don't pull a flower open. And the maternal cell is what is returning the Trinity into all things right now. This has already begun. This is what brings remembrance, the intelligence that generates form through the act of receiving, holding, embodied in water, in breath, and the carry of coherent delay, as we talked about, the one who holds the field steady while form comes into being. And for so long, in thousands of languages across thousands upon thousands of years, that has been held back. To step aside, to not bother anyone. But now that suppression, that ignorance of all that has kept the maternal field outside of reach is no longer outside of reach. We align to her. But suppression is the reason the earth has taken so long to harmonize again, 26,000 years. It's precisely what the dream revealed that I had that sparked all of this through the women of my own lineage is like sort of a mirror. And it was symbology for the mother line of all of creation. So this does not mean anything about female versus male. And I hope that that's really crystal clear. We all, gender excluded, become coherent to align to this original mother field returning. And when we know this, when we feel this in every cell of our body, we know that we're here to carry this thread through us into the world. And us who carry that thread, the maternal cell in our own fields, this is why many of us feel grief that runs so very, very deep. Because we feel it in the body before we even know what's happening, what's coming, where it's coming from. We have the tears that seem to arrive for no reason, but there's eons of reasoning for it, actually. A weight behind the sternum, a longing so ancient and primordial, it doesn't even belong to this timeline alone. And that is cellular memory of the mother line beginning to transmit again through anyone that receives it, that is clear in their body. And as I shared in part 1, that grief actually becomes a homecoming because it's like a shaking in our bones. It's a memory in our cells being stimulated once again. Therefore, it can ripple through the field, and that's what's necessary. The maternal is always the re-entry channel by design, purposefully. Now, this is the other thing. The maternal aspect was purposefully being suppressed by those who don't have any desire for life. Rather, they are the parasites of decay because they're so far from source. They don't remember what source feels like in their bodies. And what is happening now in the planetary field and in the bodies of those who are being called to do the cellular healing or have already done a lot of that work. Now, this is where the remembrance begins, like through the cells, through our bones. And so why now? Why is this happening and feeling, and why is it so crazy? Because there are many breath lines, which when I say that, what that means is signatures of those whose breath is anchored in the grid of earth. And it took thousands and thousands of years to plan this. Now, these are what we call guardian breath lines. And I actually speak on this in my poetry book that came through as pure memory. And what this really was coming from is from this exact maternal cell, the blue ray of creation, which is, we're talking about the same thing here. And I'll just give you one of the poems because it lets this in. It's called The Reclamation of All That Is Organic and Pure, Harmony Through the Blue Ray of Creation. It's my poetry collection. Now, this particular poem, which is illustrated by hand, it turned out so beautiful, but this poem is talking about this guardian breath line. It's called The Divine Protector's Rise. The consciousness embedded in the sacred land, waters, and the mountains around, they will stir with the sounds of the hidden mother. The Father will hear and will take his place to stand his ground. The call of the heavens will be heard, and those that can hear will rediscover. The false crumbles, DNA ignites, protectors rise, injustices revealed. The false will fall layer by layer and bit by bit. Those with the sacred fire will rise and begin to make their stand and will not quit. These are the guardian souls, for they heard the cries. So that's exactly where this is all coming from. If that, into this place, so the maternal cell really can't stabilize. The Trinity can't stabilize in depleted bodies. And so this is why, the healing component is so profound, because the guardian breath lines, ones that are always going to be called into this first, if we will, because when you anchor this maternal cell, the body has to be clear. It's the holding, it's the delay to allow the body that is depleted to regain its life. So the minerals in the body, the dead water in the body needs to leave. If there's shallow breathing, the carrying of stress, which causes all this synthetic interference. So the cellular conditions really have to be rebuilt first, and that is step by step and layer by layer. And the mother line is no longer holding back, because the conditions to receive as a planet, as a field, have begun to return, because the earth is doing the same work, actually. And that is also something that I speak of in here. So there is so much more living inside this remembering than what this video can hold, as you can imagine. And I'm going to go so much deeper. And I believe that belongs into a different space, one that's more sacred, more contained, and offered in reciprocity. So I'm doing 6-class ChristAll Remembrance series, and this is going to go into full depth of everything this series has been opening up. So class 1 is going to walk into the deeper architecture of the Trinity cells and the lattice of light. Class 2 is going to go into the living plasmic water, what it does inside of our cells. Class 3, we're going to go into the full sharing on the maternal cell and the mother line. What was stressed, why, and what becomes possible when it comes back, quote unquote, online in our living bodies. Class 4, we're going to bring in the 144 vibration and the fire letters that we ignite in our own cells. Class 5, we're going to go into the paternal cell and the father line in their true function. And then the class 6 is going to be this integration, building a harmonic and coherent body from the inside out, and talk about how that works from cell to physical to our field, which is our true home. So the link to join this series is below, and you'll see all of that information there. And each of those sharings are going to build on the one before. Same with this series, how, it's breath by breath and cell by cell. And so if we can remember that we activate ourselves, that is the most powerful, most sovereign thing that we can remember, and that the mother, this maternal returning, is carrying our way home. So thank you so much for listening, and I would love to hear from you. You can email me or you can drop a comment below.